the theater to your ears, this is Cinema Sync, bringing you direct thoughts fresh from the end credits. So spoiler warning in advance.
We hope you had a great Halloween and you enjoyed our double feature Halloween episode. We're going to keep the specialty things rolling because this is also sort of a special episode.
Yes, because if you're here for Don't Open This Podcast, welcome, as Mike said, to episode 65, our spotlight on Fright for Smile 2 and Woman of the Hour. If you're here from Screen Refresh Network, welcome to Cinema Sync.
Hello there. It's good to actually be here.
Who's this?
It is I am Nick. I'm coming over from Screen Refresh. I'm hoping we get plenty of people coming over to check out what we have to say tonight, as well as people on your side of the fence coming over to ours.
This is sort of weird for the uninitiated. Obviously, Tim and I do Don't Open This Podcast. Nick and Tim do a Cinema Sync, which is a short directly after a movie. The two of you guys hang out in your car after seeing it together and cover it. So we're sort of cross-pollinating an episode.
It's like growing up in the 90s with like TGIF, and you would have like Friday nights on ABC or NBC, and all of a sudden you would have like two sitcoms cross over. It's Uncle Phil on the set of Family Matters. That's this.
Yeah, that's what this is.
So we're going to be talking a little bit about Smile 2 tonight, and a little bit extra, just because I think it's been a little bit of time since Halloween, and now that we're recovering, we're going to get into a little bit of other stuff too.
So it's a bit of smile and smile again, and maybe some stuff we're excited about that's coming up soon. How do we kick this off? Do we do Smile 2 or Smile 1 first?
I mean, I think organically we'll end up on Smile 1 for Smile 2, but if I
this makes sense.
May be so bold, anybody out there that hasn't seen the first Smile, I actually think you're perfectly fine going into Smile 2, because for the most part, you get enough stuff explained to you. But because it's not so wildly new, if you saw Smile 1 recently, it feels almost like it's more of the same, but a better version of it. So to me, it's just like Smile 2. You're fine just seeing Smile 2 and seeing the better version of the story.
Skip it. Skip the first one. Just go right into the second one.
Skip the first one? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it is, Nick, it's very much like there's only two Smiles, but there is a similarity between something like the Friday the 13th series, where you really are getting the same story, just a different setting and different people.
Yeah.
It's the same vibe.
Plus, I think overall, this one, just the characters themselves, I was more interested in. I was interested in the story more. I think the writing, even though we'd laughed at a couple parts here and there, it was clearly like it seemed intentional. So it wasn't laughing at, wow, this was bad. It's laughing at like, they're almost self-aware in instances, which we'll get into.
Gonna ruin the tour.
I know when we sat down, you looked over to me just before the movie started and you said, I hated the first one. And I was like, oh no, then we're here and about to go into Smile 2. And I'm glad that this worked out, that Smile 2 ends up being, I think, head and shoulders above the first one.
Well, I felt watching the first one, I mean, I didn't give it like a 1 out of 5, that's for sure. But just, I was surprised that it got a sequel. And then seeing the trailer and knowing what was at stake, if they didn't change a single thing about the plot and applied it to a different scenario, I felt it would have done much better. And that's kind of exactly what they did. And I feel because they did it in that sort of way, the stakes were so much higher, despite how it's literally the same exact plot. It worked so much better for the sake of this story versus the first one because it was so much smaller.
Well, one of my immediate takeaways from Smile, when Smile first came out, I just wrote it off as like everything about it, the trailer, everything. It just looked like your standard run-of-the-mill, forgettable modern-day horror movie. Like I wasn't
jump scare.
Seeing it. Yeah, exactly. When I did watch it, I watched it in a weird way. I didn't see it in the theater. I watched it at home, and my brother Mark had just gotten COVID. So he was like laid up at his house in quarantine, and he was bored out of his mind. So we were talking, and we decided to watch it.
Best way to
sort
see
of
Smile,
like
captive.
we're like, let's watch it like high school teenagers. And he watched it from his house. I watched it at mine, synchronized, and we sort of texted each other updates as the movie was progressing. And I think we were both impressed with the quality of the movie in terms of the way it looked and the overall performances. But we both were jumping back and forth, sending each other texts about, man, this movie would be so much better if the movie It Follows had never been made.
Yes.
Because it borrows a little too heavily. I'm okay with a homage, but like, you know, or borrowing a sequence, like when you watch Color Out of Space and you know Richard Stanley was tipping his hat to the dog scene, the kettle scene from The Thing. But It Follows and Smile are like, you almost could make Smile part of the It Follows universe if you're doing a universe thing. And the universe would be, it's our reality, but there's all of these smaller, low-key demons that have been existing amongst us for decades and decades, but we never can really prove it because they play it like low-key. So It Follows could have had a sequel called It Smiles, and then you make a third movie called It Something, and it's a different type of demon. I would have fucking preferred that to what we ended up getting, but that's just me being a nitpicking bastard. So
I do say, walking out of the first one, I did like the creature design. I think the first one did have a similar problem with some of the writing, although again, I don't know if they're self-aware of it, of like, they did the, a loud noise, it's just a cat, but they did that like 3 times in the first movie to the point where it's like laughable, and they did similar stuff in this one where I don't know if they're being serious of a woman covered in blood, she runs out of the room and they just say, but Sky, what about the tour? And it's like, it's all of those things that are funny.
I think I liked Smile more than both of you. I didn't love the movie, but I think it, you know, it was like a really good amped up episode of Tales from the Crypt or an anthology series, or It Follows, or any numerous films that have come before and after it that we haven't even watched because they're such low rent streaming movies, but you know they're there. There's got to be 5 more movies like this. But it's done pretty well, the first one. I think there's a couple of really visceral kills that stick with you that are super well done, and it kind of invests you in what's going on. The lead character is actually not that cool. She's sort of a fucking asshole, which I noticed more of that through line in the second film, where the lead of the second film is sort of an asshole as well.
Yeah, it's because I know, at least, Nick, when we saw it, that we liked Naomi Scott better as a lead in this one, even though, like you said, there's problems with her, like literally her character. So Sky Riley, the pop star who's returning to tour after she ends up having a horrific car accident that like kills her boyfriend because they were on drugs, and she's had this wild lifestyle, but now she's cleaned up and back on tour when all of this happens. I think they set this up better in this story than the first one, because it's, well, you're acting so crazy. Well, yeah, are you using again? It's somebody who is beating addiction, but now all of a sudden they're dealing with this that makes them very suspicious. That I think they set this one up much better to explain away a lot of the stuff that is, well, you're acting crazy all of a sudden, and it's kind of hand-waved away, except in this one where it makes sense.
It's the Evil Dead remake setup. Same setup as the Evil Dead remake. Yeah. So Smile 2, I mean, we should mention, because we're trying to kind of spoiler-free the major elements of it, but it does pick up in one of those direct ways of anyone who saw Smile, when you're left at the end of Smile going, okay, so what next? They really do deliver in that regard, and you get an opening act, essentially. It's almost like a mini first act that pulls in elements from the ending of Smile. And oddly enough, I think that might have been like one of my favorite sequences in the whole fucking movie, if not maybe the best sequence in the whole movie, and it is your opening.
I was actually really confused about the opening until about 3/4 of the way in, because at least without going too much into spoilers, just I was trying to piece together the timeline of events on where it was, and
like how soon after.
Yeah, and
well, since you get a week, you get 6 days and you're dead. So I think it was day 5 around there, like the end.
Well,
tail end of his infection.
That whole sequence happens, and then I thought it was a year later because they had said that the lead actress was in a car accident, and it took her a year to get, recovery and going through all the different therapy sessions, and it took her a while to get back on her feet.
I'm sorry, Nick. You mean the curse on her?
Yes.
You mean her part? Okay, all right.
Yeah.
When you said confused about the beginning, I thought you were confused about the cop character,
Kyle Gallner.
No.
So
because the way that like a car accident is kind of what triggers and starts the whole movie to begin with. So they kept saying on how car accident. I was led to believe that was her in the very beginning.
Oh, because they don't show
wasn't.
hers until later. So it's like,
gotcha.
Car accident in the beginning, and then car accident happened to her.
So I was assuming like the drug dealer junkie kid was under this thing's influence for almost a year straight. Like, good for him.
Wow.
Like, he's been able to do this whole time, and he's a pro at it.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
You're really not wrong. There so much happens in that first 20 minutes of this movie that it is pretty easy to feel, and plus you're dealing with unreliable narrators across the board, where one of the key elements of the movie is, you think this is real, let's stretch it, and guess what, it's fake, it's a hallucination, but then sometimes it is real. So yeah, the whole thing could be a little convoluted in the going.
It's very Oculus in that sense, actually.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Of like you're seeing one thing, so you react, and all of a sudden you realize, like, oh no, I made a horrible mistake, or like, oh no, I just like shot the wrong guy, or punched somebody in the face, or I'm eating glass, like all this stuff, which I do appreciate from this. And I think also Smile 2, the entire opening feels like a great short film, which really makes sense considering that Parker Finn, who directed this, originated the whole thing through, I think it was called Laura Hasn't Slept. The character who goes and kills herself in the beginning of the first movie, it's about her having, like, going to, I think it was like a doctor and explaining the situation and having issues and all of this. So it came from a short film idea, and you can really see that on display with the beginning of this movie, that if you didn't get the rest of this would be a great little short film that just is another, like, and it's the bookend at the end of the Smile universe. Disappointing that I mean, it's disappointing that I think my interest in it definitely stayed throughout the entire film. I think it was definitely highest in the first 10 minutes, because seeing Kyle Gallner and seeing like all of what's going on with him, I would have loved to have seen an entire film of like this happening to a cop and he's trying to like continue the investigation and all of this, rather than starting again from somebody new who has no prior knowledge of what's happening to them.
And also, this is one of those, Smile 2 has something going for it and against it. And what I think it has going for it is, like Nick and Tim mentioned earlier, we all three of us think her character having this Sky Riley, kind of like a cross between Britney Spears and Taylor Swift sort of thing. It's a much more interesting group of people to follow.
Yeah.
She's got her assistants. She's got her old friends that she's fucked over when she was off on benders and stuff. It's a more interesting setup. But at the same time, this is Smile 2, so all of us in the audience that have seen the first one, we know what goes down in the first movie. So I think Parker Finn and crew are kind of tied, their hands are tied, where they're trying to up the ante on the visual element of what it is, because we already sort of know the rules. It's like the minute she sees someone kill themselves, we know what's coming next.
Yeah.
It's like, here's that slow burn of, oh my God, am I going crazy? Let me drink water, and let me drink more water, because my therapist told me to drink water when I'm freaked out, So I think it's that retread feel of, as Nick mentioned, he'd rather just have you not watch Smile. Erase that from your brain and just watch Smile 2 as Smile.
I think you could get away with it. I
could agree with you on that, because, yeah, you really could. You would just wonder who the fuck's the guy in the very beginning.
When you mentioned it before on how Smile just seemed like your generic, very forgettable horror movie, that's kind of right how I encapsulated it to be. Like, it wasn't bad by any means, but I completely forgot about it within a week. Yeah. And then
I just think it's above a lot of its peers that were in that same echelon. At least this had some stuff to kind of stick with you, like a few things, but by no means is it a classic at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole reason why I originally mentioned before of like, if you haven't seen the first one, you're fine just going to the second, is since it's a lot of the similar beats overall of all of it, there's some different things, but it's similar enough that if I were to get somebody to sit down and be like, hey, you should check these movies out, watch the first one, then watch the second one, they might not be into it because it's a lot more of the same. So it's like, okay, then if that's the case, start with 2, then go to 1.
It's like starting a new book series, though, because it's like, yeah, this is an amazing book series, but there's 7 books in it, or 2, 3+ books in it, and you got to sell them on the first one, and then we'll see how well the rest of them go. And when it comes to something like this, I don't see the point.
I think Tim might be overestimating some of the horror movie audience, because there's people that are like, I'm watching all the Saw movies one after another. I think maybe because of what I do for a living, like with having different clients in my chair all the time, I will say that every time a client picks out Smile because they haven't seen it, it seems like every client, whether they think it's an A or a C, every client seems to be thoroughly entertained by it. And I feel like we all 3 of us recently watched Smile 2. I think I saw it maybe 2 days ago, and you guys might have seen it 3 days ago.
Yeah, I think it was on Thursday.
It entertained the shit out of me. I remember mentioning to Tim, it is a touch over 2 hours, and I do think a few of the watch me breathe really heavy as I think I'm seeing horrible stuff, but it's really a hallucination. I feel like they could have truncated those a little. There was maybe 1 too many, since it always ends the same way, where it's like that noise and that sort of, I'm in reality now. It wasn't. And then there's that little beat a moment later where it's like, oh, but are you? Here's another little scare. But then it's like cool again. It sustained enough tension for me to be like, I enjoyed it. There was even there's one jump, it's an earned jump scare. There's one like moment that actually did jolt me. Like my whole body moved. I really wasn't expecting this one thing. So there's a few, I guess for people that like the roller coaster ride vibe, this movie has that. It's got that like fun, scary. It's actually quite gory. I appreciate that about both films. They don't shy away from blood.
Yeah, I think it's what really sets
come up
it
with
apart
interesting
from
ways.
It's like PG-13 peers. It's like you have a PG-13 premise, but you have an R execution.
Also, for parents out there with those like tween age kids, Smile 1 and 2, if you have kids that like blood, like they're not going to be turned off and they're gore hounds, you could watch the Smile movies because there's pretty much zero sex, like zero.
Yeah.
And the profanity isn't really even, it doesn't stick out in my head. It's not like a ton of really vile cursing constantly. It's mostly just a horror movie with a lot of blood and gore and fair to moderate jump scares. But I don't know. I enjoyed the 2 of them together. I was a little put off by the lead actress, Naomi Scott, filling the screen. Well, telling me, no, not in the movie, before the movie. Her little commercial of like telling me how much love was put into the movie and how much I should enjoy the movie. It's like, people need to stop, like Tom Cruise does that. Like, don't sell me on the fucking ticket that I already bought. Like, I'll make my own decision of whether your movie's good or not. I know you all worked hard on it.
I do feel
but that was a little weird.
Like tone deaf at this point now. It's just what movie was it? There was one that came out like I think last
Dungeons and
year
Dragons.
Before. Was that the one
where it's like the entire cast and they're like, thank you for being in seats in a theater where movies actually happened, and you're like, oh, I'm sorry.
They all look like they clearly were not paid enough to make that one extra segment.
Checking their phones to make sure.
And it's also like you're talking to the wrong people.
Yeah.
We're the ones in the seats, you know.
Like you got me. But yeah, I think we'll say this then. Smile 2 definitely worth seeing. I think if you saw the first one and you didn't care for the first one, you might still want to check out the second, just because, for instance, like Nick, you didn't like the first one like a ton. It was forgettable. Second one you appreciated more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for numbers, I don't do numbers that often, but like I think Smile for me is like a 6, and I think Smile 2 is like a 7.5. Like that's where I think they're solid. I will buy Smile 2 when it comes out because, as I mentioned, a lot of the clients that have never seen Smile like it. So with that in mind, it kind of plays nicely with the whole Candyman type of movies and things like that. They fit in well.
I'm super interested in a Smile 3 based on the end of Smile 2, which is exactly how I wanted that to go. That's how I wanted Late Night with the Devil to go. But we'll probably not get Smile 3 for a bit, because I think Parker Finn is now working on a remake of Possession, the Andrei Zulawski film, with Sam Neill and everything.
That doesn't need to happen, but okay.
It's
not a movie that you need to
It's a bold
remake.
choice.
It just isn't.
I'll be interested to see how that plays out, but I agree. Like, I think the original is still great currently.
Sure.
But now I'm just like doubly interested in, you go from Smile to Smile 2 to a remake of Possession. I'm on board.
Well,
I'll see it.
The little infomercial in the beginning of our film, she clearly used the term Smile Universe. So I was like, I guess we're definitely getting a Smile Universe. Like they just coined it, you know? So that's it. I mean, Smile, it's decent. It's worth seeing. Nick, did you see Woman of the Hour?
I did, on my own accord. I didn't know y'all were going to talk about it until Tim mentioned it in passing. Like, yeah, we're going to talk about this. I'm like, oh, well, good thing I did my homework already.
So this is like a, double cinema sync, double spotlight on Fright?
Yeah, it works. We're entertaining our listeners, that's all. So a few episodes back, when Tim was on a hiatus and I had Anthony from Dread and Terror filling in for him, we're both big true crime fans, and we sort of went off and did a two-parter on true crime-based horror films. And I had actually sent Anthony a link to this movie because I was so sad that it didn't fit in. It didn't come out in time to be in that episode. But that's okay, because I'm here with you guys. And what movie am I fucking talking about?
That would be Woman of the Hour, directed by Anna Kendrick.
Directed by who?
Anna Kendrick, the girl who did the Cops song in Pitch Perfect. And she's done
the girl
some
that also
other stuff
stars
too.
in Woman of the Hour.
You mean the girl from Twilight?
Oh, yes. The one from Twilight. But yeah, I think Anna Kendrick, great directorial debut.
Yeah, pretty stunning directorial debut. She clearly likes the right people and is pulling little bits from the right people and crafting her own vision, because it was extremely well made.
Yeah. For anybody who hasn't seen it or is unaware of what exactly it is, it's the true story of an actress who is trying to get roles. This is during the 1970s. She's in Los Angeles. She's working on kind of getting booked for various roles, isn't getting a lot of stuff offered, is finding she's running into a lot of the rampant kind of sexism of its time. It's luckily sexism left Hollywood after the 70s. But then she ends up getting a job going on to this dating game show where she's going to be a contestant. And as she goes through, she meets three gentlemen, one of who we start seeing a bunch of clips of him going around town throughout various times in the past, however long it was. I think it was like in the past month or past year, committing murders of women in town. And we're kind of left with this time bomb of one of the contestants on this show is a killer, and what's going to happen with all of this. I think it's a great premise.
It's a great way of, the premise. I mean, we mentioned it earlier, but just to hammer this home, this really is a true story in a sense that the killer in this film is named the same killer as the real life killer. And it's Rodney Alcala. And the dating game, I mean, I know anyone really young listening to our show would maybe think that's a made up thing. The dating game was the actual name of this dating show that ran for a very long time, and it was in syndication for years after. So I grew up watching the dating game. It was on all the time. And it was really tacky, and just, you could tell, watching it now, you could tell that it's sort of like a scripted show.
Yeah.
But as you're watching it growing up, it seemed like real life. So, like Tim said, this aspiring actress takes that role just sort of to get by, and maybe to get noticed.
Yeah,
because in real life, Sally Field was actually on the dating game and was discovered through that. So there was some merit to it. But Rodney Alcala had been murdering people for years prior, and I don't want to give any of like the the twists are real twists that really happened, and they're infuriating. So I will just say that his reign of terror, it spanned from New York to LA and a bunch of places in between. And this was just while his narcissistic ass was in LA, so full of himself that he actually was a contestant. You could look it up on YouTube and watch the actual episode of The Dating Game. He was so confident in his ability to just sort of pull the wool over people's eyes and sneak out of any situation, because he'd been getting reported for numerous violent acts, and he just would sort of charm his way out or create a doubt in the police's mind. And I mean, it also wasn't very good police work, clearly.
No, this movie will make you even angrier at the justice system. From all of the stuff that happens during and all of the like epilogue text and everything, you just wonder, like, have we ever had a point where we're like, wow, the justice system works perfect?
Yeah. The Wikipedia page on Rodney Alcala is a really, really wonderful, it's a disturbing, but a well put together, like 10-minute read. If you just read the whole Wikipedia page, it'll fill in every blank. Because when you have a story like this that spans that much time, I think that Kendrick and her crew, they smartly grabbed 3 or 4 major aspects to what he did and who he was. And they really merged them nicely in a way where the film narrative flows super smooth, but it does jump all around. And it even jumps within the timeline of one of the alternate stories they're telling.
Yeah.
But it does it in a way where you're so fucking glued through tension and performance that the minute it cuts to a different part of the story, I'm left like, I wanted to know where that other story was going, but then I also was super interested in where the recent story they're putting in front of me, I'm like, well, where's that going? Because that was interesting too. So you're really like engaged in 4 different like aspects of one story, and it never feels boring because they keep sustaining tension almost to a painful degree where you're like, don't cut away from this, but they'll cut away when you want the resolution, and you get the resolutions to everything. Yeah. So it delivers. It just delivers in a weird way.
It's surprising that this movie is like 90 minutes and it gets through all those stories and all of that extra. And we were just talking about how Smile 2 is 2 hours and 7 minutes long.
Yeah.
There was a quote that I saw from somebody. I forget who said it, if it was just some Redditor or if it was somebody big. But they said that, like, every movie needs to be 90 minutes and that's it. If you dare go over the 90-minute mark, you need to earn every single minute that happens afterward.
I remember mentioning that on, I think it was like our first Rule of Thirds. That was Elric Kane, who is on the Pure Cinema podcast, and he's on Colors of the Dark podcast. But on one of his previous ones, that's what he said of, you get 90 minutes, you earn every minute after that. I will sit through a 2 hour and 10-minute film if you earn all of that extra time that you need to tell this story and keep me entertained.
I appreciate that movies now are longer than they used to be, but at the same exact time, not every movie deserves to be that 2 hour mark. Like Smile 2,
like
I felt
said,
like Mike said, there's at least one entire segment that I feel they could have easily have cut out. It wouldn't have ruined the pacing. It wouldn't have ruined the setup or explanation of how the plot is progressing. You could have easily cut that out and nothing would have changed, and I would have walked out just with exactly the same opinion. It's just I didn't need to see 10-15 minutes more of what it had.
And plus, hey,
did you
works
need
for your pocket.
6 shots of her drinking water, like a whole bottle of water 6 times? Like
clearly there was some ad placement, so make sure when you drink that the label is facing the camera. So
but I mean, what you do is you take a 2 hour and 7 minute Smile 2, cut 2 of those scenes out, and then this way you automatically have something for the extended cut for when you release the I was going to say home video release. The 4K.
They should do that. They really should. And at 90 minutes, I mean, this thing was cut and edited perfectly. The pacing was perfectly fine. My only complaint through it was I was starting to get confused on the time jumps. And I was starting to lose, like, when did this happen? Yes. And like the sequence of some things happened in like 75 versus 73 versus 79. And I was I was starting to lose as to when certain things were happening. Obviously,
They tried
I knew
to give
like
you a year marker,
they did.
but that's what I like. Without spoiling the film for anyone not watching, because it really is tense. One part that we all would assume is your end part that wraps it up. The shocking, annoying part is that's just like the almost end. There was more shit after. And that's what you'd have to look up to get the details. They give you a couple lines at the end. Sadly, a couple of those text lines come up over almost a white sky and they're white lettering. So be prepared. Like when that end happens, you really need to be focused on the screen to read those or you're going to miss some of it.
But yeah, I mean, overall, I think Woman of the Hour, definitely I'm interested in seeing more of what Anna Kendrick does and what she chooses as stories to tell going forward, especially after this, because I did like how Woman of the Hour, for a movie that's so focused storyline-wise on violence against women, that the violence is not something they linger on, really. It's, we're getting the terror of the situation, but whereas other films might decide like, okay, well, now that they're getting attacked or now that they're getting murdered, we're going to let it linger like a couple extra minutes afterwards of the titillation of the violence. And this, it's just, no, the violence is something that is part of the plot, but it isn't the plot itself. Like, I liked that they're kind of steering away from really focusing in on that throughout this.
I felt it was very pro-woman throughout the entirety of watching it, because it was very much, there were scenes where they're in a busy, crowded place, but the scene is silent. You just hear the dialogue between the two actors. Most directors would include some kind of ambiance in the background. This didn't have that. Yeah. And it noted on a lot of things on where it's a horror movie, but I thought it was a weird pick for you guys to pick this one because it's like, it's not your typical one. This is just like, this is the life of being a woman in the 70s. Like, it's fucking scary. Now. Yeah, or even now. All the shit that they have to deal with from the male perspective, we don't get to see a lot of that. And this really did have more eye-opening events to kind of make you remember, like, a lot of the dates that we went on, they might have been scared shitless, whereas we would never have thought the same thing that goes through their minds. Yeah,
I do know for a fact that Anna Kendrick, who, again, I think she literally knocks it out of the park in the park and out of the park as one of the leads and the director, because her performance is insanely good and very nuanced. The way she's presenting this character, you could feel fear from her, nervousness, self-doubt, disgust. You could feel all that through her body language. And it's done really well, especially the young woman that plays the runaway hitchhiker. She knocked my socks off. I think her name's Autumn Best. I'm pretty sure is that her name? I could be wrong. I think that's her name.
No,
she was incredible. And the man who plays Rodney Alcala, Daniel Zavato, I knew him from It Follows, and he was in Don't Breathe.
Yeah.
I think he's been in some other stuff too. I've seen The Pope's Exorcist, but he didn't click.
The best Vespa sequences you've seen this year.
But he's amazing too. Yeah. And I just think that the film is classy to where if good old Hitch was still alive, Hitchcock would leave this film being like, she's someone to watch. You know what I mean? Like, he would be into it because it is very well crafted. And again, it's terrifying in a very real way. I was super happy to hear that Anna Kendrick took all of the money, all of her salary from directing and acting. She didn't take a penny. She donated the entire thing to domestic violence against women. As Nick pointed out, this movie, a lot of my female friends that have seen it, like Kristen and Erin and my mom watched this movie, have all said that like it's so dead on in portraying the fear that women feel that it got to them on a very deep level of like, it was entertaining because they knew they were safe, but they were genuinely freaked out. Yeah. So that's a compliment to Kendrick pulling this thing off, And yeah, so if you love true crime, it's right up your alley. If you just love a good drama, like a good period piece drama that sadly is a true story, then this is a great, an hour and a half to spend.
And I know, Mike, we've talked about it previously, but Nick, if you liked this and you haven't seen the Boston Strangler, the version with Keira Knightley, that I think was a year back.
Yeah, I think we watched it during the pandemic.
Yeah. It's a great like investigative piece on the work that was done during the time of the Boston Strangler for the two female reporters.
Due to the content of the material at hand, I might not actually be seeking those kinds of movies out.
So we have plenty of other things that have been, trailers that we've been saying. There's been a lot of stuff. I think overall it's been a good year for horror, and we have a lot of stuff that's coming out the rest of this year and into next year. We'll see if all of it's good, but I think we should chat a little bit about some good stuff.
Yeah, because Tim and I are trying to hold a few things that we've seen that we've actually kept a little on the quiet end about, because we have our year in fear. So there are some films that I want to talk about that we're not gonna, and I know Tim feels the same. So we thought maybe it would be fun to talk about some trailers that we have turned each other onto. So there's a good chance that some of you guys listening might not have seen any of these, or maybe you've heard of one or two, but maybe we could turn you on to like something awesome coming out soon that you didn't even know about. So we're going to put a spotlight on trailers for a brief moment.
So for the longest time, we've had all of these trailers coming out for everything that we watched this year, but then also stuff like Long Legs. We have to see, what does Osgood Perkins do after this? And the answer is a Stephen King short story, The Monkey, that I didn't have my eye on until you mentioned it, Mike.
This trailer,
I didn't realize the trailer came out.
Fucking awesome. This trailer looks so good. If this movie is half as good as this trailer, I am going to enjoy the hell out of the movie.
It looks funnier than I would have expected. Watching the trailer.
It also looks really accomplished. It's like really well shot. The trailer is really well cut. And I don't know, it had me from the beginning to the end. So,
yeah.
I mean, if people read the story, then I guess you guys probably know way more about it than I do, because when I saw The Monkey and then I saw Osgood Perkins' name pop up as the director, I was like, well, that's cool. And then from the mind of Stephen King, my mind immediately went to, oh my God, they're remaking Monkey Shines and they're just going to call it The Monkey. So I started watching the trailer expecting to see like a dude getting hit by a car and he's all laid up. And then there's a doctor with a monkey that's going to help him do stuff. But it isn't that. Stephen King must have wrote a different story that deals with like a monkey theme than maybe Monkey's Paw. I'm not exactly sure
it's
what the
wind-up
story is.
monkey that for some reason having possession of the monkey results in all of these deaths, or that's all of this like odd series of events. Watching the trailer, it looks like a straight horror movie, but then we have so many scenes that look like it's just very darkly comic that I'm excited for, because I like Theo James. He plays the lead in this, and it's fun seeing him do like dark horror comedy as opposed to all of his like previous roles.
Right. But like just this, you guys, I mean, we're telling you about our curated trailers that we thought were the most promising. So we hope all of you go watch them, because they're only like a minute and a half. But there is a shot in The Monkey. I think someone's driving a car and they're stressed and freaking out and driving fast, like through a neighborhood. And there's this shot, I think it's a guy pushing a lawnmower, but he's completely engulfed in flame from like the waist up. And I just need to see that shot in context of what the fuck's going on in this movie. So I'm looking forward to it.
We find out all of it's part of one dream sequence.
I certainly hope not. Yeah, Nick, did you watch this trailer for The Monkey or no?
Just now.
Are you intrigued? It looks like a fun time.
I'm a little reserved. I might need the third trailer to reel me in. I never liked that clapping monkey toy all my life.
Okay.
It's this visceral clapping monkey reaction.
And seeing the image for the poster and just like the hyper close up, like, yeah, they kind of raised it to 11 in terms of scariness, but honestly, in my head, that's what the toy actually looks like anyway. So I don't know. I mean, if it leans more in the horror comedy route, I may be more inclined to watch it. But yeah, it says comedy as one of its main categories in Letterboxd anyway. So, I mean, we will see how this one goes.
And it's got our boy Elijah Wood.
Maybe he's the
Yes,
monkey.
he's in there.
He's the monkey. Just Elijah Wood's voice comes out of the monkey at the end of the film.
It also looks like Oz Perkins plays a small character role because he's in the cast, which is cool because he plays the curmudgeonly director in the opening sequences of Nope, Jordan Peele's Nope.
And he also plays David in Legally Blonde.
Oh, look at you.
It's where I originally remember him from, and then it's like Osgood Perkins directs a horror film, and I was like, David from Legally Blonde is directing a horror film? And he does a good job.
This is off topic. This is off topic for our horror film trailers, but anyone who has a passing interest in Marvel, I just want to throw it out to people that Thunderbolts trailer came out, and I think it looks wonderful. And the new Captain America Brave New World trailer. The old trailer I enjoyed and was stoked, but there is a brand new one with like split screen and stuff. I just think it looks like the best Marvel movie since like Winter Soldier. So I'm very excited to see a ground level, really cool action, like on a political intrigue crossed with superheroes. So that's my little Marvel footnote there. It looks like they're getting their shit back together.
I'm curious how it's going to be after years of reshoots.
I just hope their big trailer reveal is not the only big thing in the movie, because I'm tired of Marvel.
Oh, the Hulkbuster of it all?
Yeah, they keep releasing shots of the stuff that shouldn't have been in the trailer, or at least I understand that trailers are meant for people that don't want to watch the movie. So the more you watch the trailers, you have the first one, like the teaser, then the first real trailer, and then like 2 or 3 more after that. After you watch more and more of them, it's going to release more and more of the plot. That's normal. But for Age of Ultron, I think that's the one that where the Hulkbuster happened. They did the Hulkbuster shot in the very first trailer. Like, y'all should have pulled back on that and kept it as like the surprise. Give me reason to actually go and see the movie. Or like episode 2 with Star Wars, Yoda fighting is a huge thing that happens in the movie. That shouldn't be in one of the very first trailers that comes out. And I'm hoping that the same thing with the new Captain Falcon movie, when you see the Red Hulk, that's only tip of the iceberg, and there's so much more. Because if that's the only big thing,
I'm hoping. I'm also leaning back on the same thing of the Russo brothers have never delivered a bad Marvel film at all. They've delivered the best of the Marvel films in the grounded way. Because we all know there's like ground level threat Marvel, and then there's like cosmic, bigger, you know, Doctor Strange type Marvel. So I think they're suited for this story. I really love Mackie as the new Cap. And,
I agree.
You know, it looks really good. And Tim, if you haven't seen, or if both of you haven't seen the newest one, it dropped yesterday. It's a really, really well done trailer, and it kind of uses some of the same footage, but different angles in different parts of those. So you're not getting extra of the story. You're just getting like a better immersive feel of how it's going to look and like what the action vibe will be. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I'm still going to go see it.
I also love a good, I love a good themed slasher, especially when they're super fucking gory, but like they've got their gimmick. And there's one movie coming up soon in 2025 by Josh Rubin. Does someone want to spill the beans on the name of this one?
I will. It's Hard Eyes.
Well, it wasn't me because I teed it up. It was one of you.
So, yeah, Josh Rubin, who in a Wounded Fawn recently, when we did our year interview, I think last year, he did Scare Me. He did Werewolves Within that we covered as well. All over the comedy improv scene and like Dropout and all of this. But I love Josh Rubin. I love a lot of his stuff in terms of just his like Letterboxd reviews. I'm excited to see him taking just like a straight up horror movie slasher, especially for a holiday themed one. Because we finally, I mean, granted, yes, we had Valentine with David Boreanaz. I still watch it every February 14th, but I'm glad we get another one. Other than that, and My Bloody Valentine.
We need another Valentine Day killer for sure.
Yeah.
I actually thought this was My Bloody Valentine being remade.
Oh, just like, yeah.
So again, I saw Heretic today. This is actually one of the trailers that played with it. So today was my first viewing of it, not even expecting or knowing what it was going to be. So seeing
I saw this trailer for Smile 2. That's how I saw it. So
Oh, yeah.
we both saw it in the theater, Nick.
Yeah. And it was it looked fun. It really does.
It's the trailer that I saw was, I don't know if it's the same one that you guys saw. I saw the one that was just essentially the car sequence with a
with
tire iron.
The double skewering.
Yeah, like the sorority row tire iron. But yeah, I'm all here for it. I love seeing that Devon Sawa's going to be in this as well. I'm glad that he's popping up, especially after seeing Chucky get canceled. It's always great seeing Jordana Brewster, so I'm very interested in where this goes. If it's going to lean comedy at all, or if it's going to be kind of straight horror. I think it's listed as like horror rom-com or something.
I feel like it's going to be, I mean, just from what we saw, it feels like they're trying to give you a real throwback feel to a slasher, an unapologetic slasher, but we'll probably get some comedy. I immediately thought of Thanksgiving in terms of when I watched the Hard Eyes trailer, I'm like, this could double feature with Thanksgiving, where there's probably going to be some cringy jokes, like some of the characters are going to be like funny or thinking they're funny. We're either going to laugh at how not funny they are or actually like them, one or the other. I don't really care. I just hope it's entertaining, and I think we'll get that. And again, we need another, there's Cupid, there's Valentine, and then there's like My Bloody Valentine. And there's nothing really
My
else
Bloody Valentine
notable.
remake, the 3D one.
Yeah, I like that one. It's got Tom Atkins, end of story. I could watch it anytime.
But I'm interested also because Josh Ruman's directing, but it's penned by Landon, who did...
Michael Landon's son there?
Yeah,
Christopher Landon,
yeah, Christopher Landon, who did Happy Death Day and all of those.
And Freaky.
So
we know what we're in for.
Yeah,
it
like
cool.
I know the writing will be fun and whip smart, so we'll see how all of this is.
Moving on down our trailer line, what else do we have for people to know about?
We have Presents,
this one,
a Soderbergh
Presents.
film.
Wow.
I
want to weigh in here. Anyone going out to watch this as we're talking, watch the teaser first, which is like a minute long. Then watch trailer 1, which is a minute and like 54 seconds. I think they play really well in a series of like teaser and then regular, because I love the way they cut these trailers, both of them.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's always interesting because Soderbergh, I've heard him described as the permanent film student. He's always learning new things, or he's always being intrigued in, well, what if I do this with this? Well, what if I shoot an entire movie on an iPhone? Like, what if I do this new thing?
He shot Unsane on an iPhone.
Yeah.
That was with Claire Foy. That's a good movie.
This, now we get essentially a haunting film from a ghost POV, but it's going to be interesting, if nothing else, because I know that we've gotten some stuff previously of films where it's like, oh, we get the side of the ghost, but you end up with more of a comedy leaning of things, of like the absurdity of like, I'm a ghost and I'm living here.
This looks straight up scary.
Yeah, like I love that this is actually playing it dire seriously. So I don't know anything beyond just that.
There's that old, there's a moment where Alfred Hitchcock presented to, I think it was his producer, what if someone really good made a horror film? And he was speaking of himself. When I was watching the trailer for Presents, the longer one, it clicked in my head. I heard myself saying, what if Steven Soderbergh made a fucking like Poltergeist movie? Like someone really, he swings for the fences, and even when he comes up a little short, I still appreciate it, because he was the showrunner for The Knick, which I think is one of the best canceled shows of all time. It was such a great show about a hospital.
It was the Clive Owen one, right?
Yeah, such a good show. And his intention was to do 3 seasons, and each season would be a different decade. Like a massively different decade. So what ended up happening was they canceled the show, but you get the full roundup on the decade that they were dealing with. So that's cool. You can still watch it on its own.
Yeah.
But he makes a ton of different shit. He's a very talented guy. And I love the idea of someone really trying to put a brand new wrinkle into like the ghost possession poltergeist sort of genre. Because I think above all, this is going to be an engaging watch. Even if you're like, if you leave the theater ultra frustrated at the end or blown away, I still think everyone will agree that it was an interesting watch. So I'm stoked for this one.
I am too. You kind of hit the nail on the head that it's something different, and I hope so, because I feel a lot of the ghost and demonic stuff that's been coming out lately has just been falling flat for me. Yeah, and it's the same thing constantly, and they'll throw in their own unique twists, and this is how this one is going to be different than the other ones, but like, I don't get how, what's his name? He did the owl in The Watchmen.
Oh, Patrick Wilson.
He did the two movies. There's The Conjuring, Insidious.
Yeah,
I can't stand it. I don't know how that's gotten as many different movies as it has, and it's just, can we get something different, please? And even Tim mentioned it the other day on how it's like, whenever someone gets possessed, it's always the same exact exorcist voice, where it's just like
stock demon voice.
Yeah, like, because you guys both saw the Pope's Exorcist, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you see that with Russell Crowe?
Well, I saw it by myself.
It was entertaining, but I think it would have been so much better without those obvious tropes. Like when that kid is possessed and busts out that voice, I was just like, you just took me so out of... It was sort of crafting its own vibe, its own like little universe that it was existing in, where you have like real threats, but there's sort of like your lead guy's kind of humorous and he's getting through it. He's a different type of guy. And I was sort of enjoying that. And then it's like, oh no, you're going to become like every other possession movie ever. And I agree with Nick. It's like, if Soderbergh presents a cohesive presentation where we are consistently and only watching this film through the eyes, so to speak, of the presence, but the acting and everything else carries it beautifully. If that works, I think this will be a fucking awesome movie. And I hope it is, because obviously all we ever want are good movies. So
yeah,
that's, what is that, next year, Tim?
So
that's 2025.
Yeah, so it's supposed to be the beginning of January. I think if you check it online, it's listed as 2024 because I think it released in Sundance or one of the festivals.
Okay.
Which is always confusing of, well, this came out in 2024. It's not on our year-end review. It came out for 2024 for people who didn't get into any of these festivals to see it. So
that always happened to us with Influencer, because there was like a thing. I think we put it on our year in fear, but it was like it was actually released a year earlier, but barely anyone saw it. So
January 19th this year at Sundance, and then January 17th, 2025.
Oh, so almost like a straight
US.
year.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's one that I'm excited about a lot from I think it said in the trailers, from the producer of Barbarian.
Yeah, because Zach Krager,
really
who directed and wrote Barbarian, is producing this, but he himself is not directing this. And what film is this?
This is Companion from Drew Hancock. And this is a trailer you must just watch, because it shows you so much, but has zero context for what you're seeing. So I think it masterfully makes you want to see it, but I don't know what it's about. I really have no idea what it's about. But I do know that I love The Boys, and Jack Quaid, who plays Huey, stars in this. So that's cool. And it's got Lucas Gage and Sophie Thatcher. It's got a really good cast.
Which Lucas Gage was great in Smile,
aren't
too.
necessarily well known. What'd you say, Tim?
Lucas Gage was great in Smile, too. I'm glad to see him pop up in more genre stuff.
Yeah, like the cast is really good. But I am just so stoked to see this. I mean, there's a lot of stabbings and yelling and calmness at the same time. And then there's like people being roasted. It's hard to explain. You just have to watch the trailer.
I think this...
But what do you guys think about this shit?
I'm on board for this. I think it really makes sense that Zach Krager is producing it, because I don't know if they just took a page out of the Barbarian playbook for this trailer of...
With the promotion?
Limit the amount of information. It's like the old school trailers of, show me something that'll get me interested to see it without really knowing what I'm getting into.
Movies need to do that so much more often. I
1,000%.
truly am sick of constantly seeing the whole movie within the trailer itself.
Yeah, like I can go into this not knowing anything.
we should try and push a movement of like taking back, reclaiming movie trailers of being like badgering studios to intrigue us, don't spoil us. Like intrigue us to want to watch a movie.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of good trailers that come out, and I admire the people cutting them. There's that Strange Darling. That's a trailer where you're like, you watch that and you're like, I think I know what it's about, but I feel like there's stuff that I'm like huge swaths of information that I'm missing and I want to see it. And I felt the same with Companion. It's like you're getting bits, but you're missing way more than
like
that.
We'll get to Strange Darling when we do the year in review, but
That's
that was
the year
one
in review, exactly.
I went in cold on it and I was very pleasantly surprised of it's nice being able to go into something again where I'm sitting there of I don't know what's going, like I might have idea here and there, but I don't know exactly what's going to happen or like what's even the plot of the rest of this film. That gets ruined so many times with all of these other ones. And that's why when we get something like a Companion, it kind of re-sparks my interest in it.
When you watch enough movies, you can piece together the entire thing by just the trailer. And within the last year, the only time I watch trailers, honestly, is when I'm in the theaters, because I'm not the type of person that I'm going to, close my eyes and plug my ears and hum to avoid what's going through it. Like,
right.
That's the only time I'm going to watch trailers. And whenever someone asks, oh, you should watch a trailer for this, like, I'd rather just take their elevator pitch and then from that point, watch the movie cold, because I'm much more likely to enjoy it start to end, because I'll start building. Sometimes it's pretentious, I'll admit, but like I'll start thinking of my own how the plot should go, and if it doesn't go that way, I'm immediately knocking a star off of it, which is not fair for the movie itself, but at the same time, it's just I've seen enough.
That was like Tim and I ranting about expectation, like unreasonable expectation on our last episode, but at the same time, it's like I do feel like a lot of these, they're not newer companies, but they are companies that some have been rooted in horror and strange, like crime cinema, like A24. But there are some existing production companies that are now picking up more of these movies, like Neon. Neon's making a big name for itself. And there's another one, I want to say Vertical Pictures or something, but I think I'm wrong with the name of it. But they're like a newer company. Maybe it was Vertigo Entertainment or something.
Vertical.
Vertical, thank you, dude. But I think a lot of these companies are made up of more people with our sensibility. They're not these like brainless suits that don't give a fuck. They're actually picking up some of these movies because A, they know they can turn a profit, but I think they also like the subject matter and are trying to do it justice.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these newer trailers that I've been seeing for cinema that I'm interested in, a lot of those trailers are leaning more into the mystery and in enticing you, but not giving you the entire plot, which sort of leads me to The Damned, because I watched this trailer and was like, wow, there's certain things I'm a sucker for. And one of them is a good like 19th century period piece. And another one is like, I'm really into Tim and I have talked about this endlessly. We're both suckers for like Iceland and Alaska and cold environments and,
love a cold horror movie.
Ships, maritime stories. And for anyone who loved season 1 of The Terror, and if you kind of dig the Lovecraft vibe, I got a feeling The Damned might be right up your alley and you'll be quite excited to see it.
I am very interested in it, but like you said, it was already checking a lot of my boxes to begin with of I love this cold setting, I love this period piece setting, and the idea of, so the whole thing is essentially this Icelandic fishing village, and all we're really given in the trailer is just there's another situation offshore that it's somebody needs help, we have to go get them, and they get them and they bring them back, and there's some sort of occurrence. And then we're just treated to like a single shot of you see something like move under the skin of the body. And now it leaves you wondering of, okay, so is this going to be like a Thing situation? Is this going to be like a parasite slither type thing? Like, is this going to be maybe we'll find out that it's just somebody's imagination and that's not actually any of that at all in this film, and it's just cannibals or something. But it's enough to get you thinking of what is this going to be when I finally sit down and watch this. And I love that.
I think it might be supernatural, and I kind of hope it is. I mean, Tim and I are both unapologetic, massive fans of John Carpenter's The Fog. And there's a couple of beats in this trailer that it clearly is not like a leper colony on a ship. It has nothing to do with that. But there's a couple of like little moments in this where I fantasized of like, oh, you could make a Fog prequel. Like you actually could, where it's like a period piece showing what transpired at Antonio Bay 100 years ago. But this seems like we have talked in the past about when you watch a film that you know the filmmaker's heart is in the right place. You could tell that the team making this, even if this movie ends up being mediocre, they were trying to make something great. You could feel it in the shots and in the moments that they're sharing. So I'm intrigued, and I want to see this one for sure. It's directed by a guy named Thordu Palsan, who I don't recognize the name, but
maybe we will after this gets released.
Exactly. What were you going to say, Tim?
I was going to say, for anybody interested on the comic side of things, I know I read horror comics a lot. There's a book called Plunge that is written by Joe Hill that is about a scavenging expedition, and they're hired to go out into the deep sea, and they end up finding these like other sailors that supposedly had gone missing or died years ago. They find them on an island, and they're infected with these parasites that reminds me a bit of like what's going on here. But they're infected with these parasites, and it's this whole story of them now being kind of coerced into helping them of, you have to get down into the bottom of the like trench and you have to release a way for us to get home. And I love like a period parasitic at sea sailor story. So I'm hoping to get it with The Damned, but for anybody else that likes that idea,
you might be getting that. You might be getting that GIF wrapped to you in The Damned. It feels very much like that's where it's going.
See, my question though is, did you guys enjoy The Witch? Or as Tim affectionately calls it, the Vivitch?
I say the Vivitch because our dear co-host Dean over at the other Screen Refresh shows, we walked in to go see it in Boston, and he said 2 for the Vivitch because they use the old style like VV for the W, and I cannot get it out of my head since then.
I call it The Witch, just like I call it Midsummer, even though I know it's Midsommar, but it sounds stupid when you say it that
I say Sevenin, even though I know it's 7.
But I enjoyed The Witch, Nick. I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I didn't, and
I was going to bet $5 you didn't. I felt it.
And just the trailer for this reminded me too much of it. And
I got a feeling there's a lot more that happens in this movie than in The Witch in terms of visual stuff going on.
I am hoping for that.
Yeah, that it's going to end up like all sizzle no steak.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I'm a sucker for this. I'll check it out anyway, but we'll see. And if it comes out when you're back,
you will tell me how it is.
Oh, okay. Well, will you go see this next one?
I'm not sure. Sinners is a movie that
you're a hard sell, Nick Rivera. You are a tough cookie,
sir.
You just sort of seem to not like a lot of things you haven't even seen yet.
I am not a hard sell by any means.
I don't know.
You're just.
He liked Smile too.
I did. And I hated the first one. So Sinners is just, I don't know what to expect with this one, because this is one of those where I had seen the trailer like 15 times over the course of the summer. And it reminds me of that Lovecraft Country show that had been on HBO, where I feel there's something a lot more going on with this movie that it's not showing.
They hand you 2 lines in it of like, you do so much evil or something and the devil follows you back to your door, something like that. So it better be supernatural from the way they're crafting this trailer. You're going to have a lot of annoyed people.
Because I can't tell if it's going to be some cosmic horror that's, taking over this town, or if it's just
vampires,
good old racism.
Or I mean,
and I can't tell of which one it could go in which direction. And it's
called Sinners, The tagline is "Dance with the Devil."
It could be a dance film.
It's probably going to be a zombie movie, but with not zombies, but with demonically possessed people. That's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm expecting.
I'm hoping it's vampires, just for the fact that the concept of during this time of a sundown town, seeing as we're talking about like the racism in the South during like the 1800s, the 1900s now.
Yeah, but Lovecraft Country covered.
Yeah, specifically like Lovecraft Country. The idea of vampires in sundown town, of like, oh, like that kind of all melds together in that sense.
Sure.
But the whole thing is Michael B. Jordan pulling double duty as twin brothers. And I'm curious to see, from the poster at least, it makes it look like, okay, so is one good, the other one ends up going evil, and then it's like a battle between the two over the heart of this town. But it looks exciting.
I thought the trailer looked awesome. It's got like an updated Angel Heart vibe.
Yeah.
Like I'm so down to see it. I mean, I'm a sucker for anything set in like a small town environment where you're kind of trying to survive some sort of attack. I hope it's good. It's got Delroy Lindo in it. So to me, that's worth my ticket price alone.
Yeah.
Is just to see him on screen.
Well, also, I know we talked about Lovecraft Country, and it also has Wunmi Mosaku, who plays the sister in Lovecraft Country. Which, again, if anybody hasn't seen it, it's so disappointing it didn't get a second season, but I loved the show. Yeah, go check it out. It's a little jarring that they're using modern music for it, so it's like, all of a sudden, it's like supposed to be whatever it was, I think like Prohibition era, or like the 40s, or sorry, it's like the 50s. And then during the 50s, they're headed to the bank while they play like Rihanna's Bitch Better Have My Money or something, and I was like, this is jarring, but I still love this show.
The whole thing is, I think, very jarring in a way that actually, once you let it wash over you and like embrace that you have no idea where shit's going, it actually works. Because what's weird is that like the first couple episodes appear to have like it's going on a linear storytelling bent, and then it all of a sudden like splits into one-off stories of like one episode is one story.
Yeah. But
then there'll be another episode that's like 2 or 3, and then there's sort of an overarching narrative. So it's a unique and very bizarre cornucopia of Lovecraftian themes. So I'm hoping that Sinners has that flavor, like that sort of like lived in feel. I like when things have an authenticity about it. And Southern Gothics are super cool stories, in my opinion, when they're done well. So I'm up for this one.
Plus,
I want to see where the Gatling gun comes into play. Like show me where all this comes together.
I think between the Black Panther films, between the Creed films, like I think I trust Ryan Coogler. Of like, I'm in good hands. Of I will get my ticket price returned of the amount of entertainment I'm getting on this. So I'm very cautiously optimistic this will be something that I will dig. For anybody, again, comic books, if anybody else is familiar with the series Bitter Root, you should go check that out. That is a similar thing. It's during the Harlem Renaissance, and it's this family that for generations does like monster hunting, and they do various things through all like Southern magics and whatnot. But it reminded me a lot of this from watching the trailer, so go check that out too.
That sounds like a fun time. And I think any dyed-in-the-wool horror fan has been aware of the new Nosferatu film coming out. That trailer's been out for a long time. I think we referenced it already. They did release a second version, I think. I watched it. It's very much the same trailer with a couple extra little moments, a little extra Defoe, and a couple other things. They still are keeping the actual Count Orlok very well under wraps, which I would expect nothing less from them. So we're going to have to wait on that. But that is my most anticipated like Christmas movie to go see. And I don't know. I don't know if Nick and Tim, if either of you guys have another upcoming movie that maybe we forgot and remembered midway. I don't know.
I have
Borderlands 2. Is that happening?
Oh, God.
That's a joke.
Coming soon to a red box near you.
Coming from Heretic, I was able to see a new cut of The Wolfman, and it was less like an Alien trailer, because of the way that the letters would fade in, and this was more of like a plot trailer, and it actually showed you what was actually going on. Hooks me even further. I definitely would want to see that.
Nick, I am so glad you brought that up, because I watched that trailer recently and was equally impressed. Were you expecting what that plot is? Because I wasn't. I didn't think that was the plot we were going to get at all. So now I'm like even more intrigued, like you said. So I got high hopes for the Wolfman. And
then the other is going to be Y2K. That one looks like a much more fun, kind of like This Is the End with jarring imagery, but at the same time, it's going to be a lot more leaning toward comedy than actual horror. But watching the trailer for this included things that I had not seen in the teaser that was previously released or any of the other stuff, and it looks a lot more fun than I expected it to be. I'm looking forward to that as well.
It looks...
I've never even heard of that, so I'll...
Yeah, so it's directed by Kyle Mooney from SNL, but the producer team is Jonah Hill and Evan Winter, who previously worked on all of their other stuff like Superbad and things like that. So it's going to be...
Is James Franco in it?
I don't believe so.
That was a joke.
Oh.
No, that was just... James Franco's not in...
Fred Durst is.
He's not in anything anymore.
Yeah, that was the biggest...
That was the joke there.
Takeaway from that trailer was like, was that Fred Durst? And it was.
I think it's going to be weird but fun, and I'm just really hoping it's just this like sci-fi horror comedy that you can just throw on with friends kind of film, because I don't think this is going to be something that's like one for the ages. I think it's just going to be like
right. It's just a
fun
popcorn movie. So
yeah.
But yeah, to all of our listeners, we tried to kind of curate half a dozen or more trailers that grabbed us, because you see a whole bunch of trailers for shit that you immediately forget, like, because there's nothing memorable about them.
Yeah.
But all of these stuck out to each of us in different ways. So we thought you guys could all chill out for 15 minutes and just sort of watch all these trailers. And I think we can give you like a list real quick in case you wanted to remember those titles again. We had The Monkey, Hard Eyes, Presence,
Companion, The Damned, Sinners,
Nosferatu, and what were the ones you threw in?
Y2K and The Wolfman.
Yeah, so that's plenty of trailers for you to go check out.
I think we're eating good this year.
Yeah. For people that consistently complain every year that the year sucked for horror, we put out a Year in Fear every year to tell them that they're wrong and stupid, because there's a lot of good movies that have come out in the genre. So that about wraps this episode up. We're back in a couple weeks with a feast for horror fans to enjoy.
Yeah. So as part of this whole big crossover, so you'll hear Nick and I next on Rule of Thirds under Screen Refresh next week, actually. You'll see us again on Screen Refresh when we cover Lethal Weapon at the top of December. And then Mike and I are back for a two-parter Year in Fear review of 2024 while we rapidly watch any of the remaining stuff we missed.
Yeah, which is a whole bunch. Have you seen Daddy's Head?
I did.
Because I watched that a few weeks ago. Oh, that's going to be on the Year in Fear.
It sure will.
Yes, it will. So I would like to thank Nick for joining us, depending on which platform you're listening to this. And so if not, it would be me joining them.
Thank you, Nick, for joining. Otherwise, thank you, Mike, for joining.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
But yeah, that was a fun time. It was good having Nick in mixed in. But yeah, you could find us at our usuals. I mean, for Don't Open This Podcast, you could find me on Instagram at FalSignoArt. You could find Tim at Mr. Time, and you could find us together at Don't Open This Podcast with no apostrophe. And I will let Tim and Nick take it from here.
So you can shoot us an email at don'topenThisPodcast@gmail.com or find us at Don't Open This Podcast at Letterboxd, where you can find all of our previous episode lists to make it easy to follow along. Or shoot us an email at screenrefresh@gmail.com over on the Nick and I side for the rest of the Screen Refresh network. And anything you want to plug, Nick?
So definitely go check out Screen Refresh. We pull out 2 different episodes a month. Maybe for next year, we might delve into new territory with some video stuff. So definitely go check out our Phasmophobia special that we released over for Halloween. That's on YouTube, actually, and it's exclusive to YouTube. So you can find us there at the Screen Refresh Network. And then, of course, you can just follow us over at Screen Refresh on Instagram as well, at Screen Refresh, and email us there. Same thing, screenrefresh@gmail.com.
We got lucky with Screen Refresh just being not taken anywhere.
Yeah, no kidding.
I also want to plug the absolutely wonderful Ant at Dread and Terror, because he's still cracking out really cool shit. So hopefully all of the listeners from both sides will go follow him.
And someday
he's
when I
great
get
guy.
Ant to come over to Screen Refresh to do Return of the Living Dead, Rave to the Grave. So thanks everybody for joining along. For Mike and Nick, this is Tim. We'll catch you next time on Don't Open This Podcast or Screen Refresh. We hope you enjoyed Cinema Sync. We want to hear your thoughts, so reach us at Screen Refresh on Instagram or email us at screenrefresh@gmail.com, and be sure to follow us on YouTube at the Screen Refresh Network to stay up to date on all our shows. Catch the Screen Refresh podcast every first Monday, Rule of Thirds every third Monday, and Don't Open This Podcast every second and fourth.